Hello everyone. Today we'll talk about the first Greek philosophers. Everyone knows about Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and that Socrates is the father of Western philosophy. But there were others before him. He was the first. The classicists created a group for those people called the Pre-Socratics. And they called them like that because they were before Socrates, and because everyone knows Socrates, they call them the Pre-Socratics, the ones before Socrates. But they are equally important because they were the ones that some of those that taught Socrates and he became who he was. So let's talk about them. This is a map of ancient Greece to give you an idea what I'm talking about. There were six schools of natural philosophy. These are the ones that we're gonna talk today about. And the sophists. The sophists were the ones that were talking about rhetoric. Rhetoric was the art of persuading someone. There were Protagoras, Gorgias, and Critias. Plato has dialogues of them with Socrates, but we'll not talk about them. We'll talk about the six schools of natural philosophy that most people don't know much about. There are many more students of all these too, but we'll talk about the main ones. So the first school was Milesian school because it was based in Miletus here. Here, all this area was called Asia Minor. Miletus was the first one. Then we have Pythagoreanism, the school of Pythagoras, where he was located in Samos, but then he moved to Crotos, an area southern Italy, and half of those were based in southern Italy because it was the so-called Magna Graecia, the Great Greece. They were the colonies of Greece back then. Ephesian school, which is Ephesus, here in Ephesus, it was Heraclitus school. Eleatic school, it was because it was based in Elea. Elea was another city in southern Italy. The Atomic school, they were located in Thrace, up here in the north. And the Pluralist school that they were based in Acragas, another southern city in Italy, modern Italy. So half of them were based here in Asia Minor, the other half in southern Italy, and the atoms here in Thrace. So as you can see, all of them were around Athens. Athens was not the place of philosophy. That's why everyone thinks about Athens when they think about philosophy, because it was Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. But the philosophy of ancient Greece was around that area, and then some of those came to Athens and they taught, and everyone later on learned about the later Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. We'll create a different video about those. The first one, the Milesian school, from the 6th century BC, they were considered monists because they believed that there was only a single monad. Monad means unit, monada in Greek. And that's a fundamental principle. In Greece, it's called archi, in English, arche. So they believed to a single element, archi. The first one, Thales, in Greek is Thales. He was considered, but from all of them, the first, the greatest Greek philosopher. He was the one that started it all. He studied astronomy, mathematics, and geometry from other areas too, because many of these philosophers traveled to Egypt, Babylonia back then, and many other areas close to ancient Greece, because these civilizations were earlier and they had already developed their sciences, their philosophies, their geometry, astronomy. They had knowledge that were way ahead. So these philosophers traveled to those areas and they learned from those mystics and philosophers and thinkers. They came back to ancient Greece and they taught their ideas. Socrates was one of those that he traveled to Egypt and so on. And there are a couple of stories of him, and one of them was in Egypt. One day, where he was in Egypt, he was talking with some pyramid technicians, architects, or something. And because he was really good with geometry, he s- he stuck his walking stick in the sand, and using the shadow from the sun rays, he taught them the height of the pyramid, which is actually correct. He was that good with geometry. Another story goes by like this, that everyone around the area that he used to live, Miletus, they were teasing him that, Thales, you are so great, you're so clever, and why aren't you wealthy too, if you're so clever? And he told them, I don't care about money, I just care about the nature of the world, to understand how everything works. They kept teasing him, and and he said, "Oh, fine, I will show you that my philosophy can make me wealthy too if I want to." So he studied the stars, he looked up the stars, and he knew that the next year it will be a good year for olive oil. Uh, it was a good idea to have olives and factories that process them. So he went around, he bought the main factories. And the next year, everyone had to come to him with a bunch of olives because they had to process them. There were a lot. So they had to pay him because he was the owner of those factories. In the end, he became wealthy, and he told them, "You see, I looked up the stars and I became wealthy from my ideas, my philosophy." Now, first principle, his first element was water, because we're 60 or 70% of water, our bodies. Earth is mostly water. We cannot live without water. So are the animals and other living beings. So he believed that water was the first element. From water comes everything else. His student, Anaximander, he, he believed that his element, the principle, the fundamental principle was apiron. The word apiron in English it means eternal or infinite. He did not define what he meant with that, but he said from the eternal comes everything else. Next, his student Anaximenes, Greek Anaximenes, he believed that air was the first element because we cannot live without air. It's the purest form. Even fire, if you purify it, it becomes air. So probably air is the first element. From there starts everything else. His student was Anaxagoras. He believed that the first element was nous. Nous means mind, but he was talking about the cosmic mind, like Tao, like everything comes from there. But he also believed that there were infinite seeds, that all everything around us and us were infinite seeds, were many things, but we were at some point we were together, united, and the cosmic mind, his his first principle, as a prime mover, separate and preserve those. Now he brought what we call the philosophies of Asia Minor. That area was called Ionia back then. So the natural philosophies of Ionia or Ionian philosophy, he was the one with his student Archelaus that brought their philosophies first to Athens. Next, we have his student Archelaus. His theory was found in the relationship between fire and water. He looks more like a pluralist that we'll talk later on, but he learned from the monists. Comes from this lineage. His idea was when water and fire are coming together to create everything else, and when the water evaporates from fire, the moisture moves downwards and creates earth. That's how we get Earth with the living beings. But when water expands from this reaction, it gives birth to air. So we have air too to sustain Earth, and we get the four elements. His teachings, though, didn't remain also to the natural philosophy. He also taught about ethics, law, and justice, and that's where Socrates comes. Socrates was his student when Archelaus went to Athens, and Socrates built up on these ideas, the ethics, law, and justice, and that's how we have these ideas from Plato's dialogues and others of his students. But we'll talk about Socrates and the rest in a video. Next, we have the Pythagoreanism, again 6th century BC. That's the school of Pythagoras, the well-known mystic and philosopher. Pythagoras studied first with Anaximander, and then he traveled to Egypt, Middle East, and maybe some say to India. And his ideas have it's a combination of philosophy with mysticism, and that's where it gets complicated. Some say he learned from India because he talks about the eternal soul, or Orpheus, the ideas of Orpheus from ancient Greece, because he believed in the mortality of the soul that goes through the cycles of rebirth until it is purified instead of arche. He didn't have a specific element. He was talking about the soul and mathematics that we'll talk later on. He created his philosophical slash mystical school in Croton in Italy. He later on, after he traveled these areas, he was traveling more than 20 years, so he learned a lot of things. He moved to Italy also and created his school there, which combined philosophical ideas, mathematical ideas, and mystical ideas. So it was a combination. It was a cult, but not with the idea that we have in our minds nowadays with as a cult. And he didn't take students, everyone, whoever wants to come. There were rules for his school. He was the one that coined the term philosopher, the lover of wisdom. His philosophy was based on mathematics because everything is a mathematical ratio. The story goes that while he was passing by through a blacksmith that was working on various pieces of iron, and he was hitting on various anvils, he noticed that each anvil had a different sound. And from that, he understood about the mathematical ratios and that they are connected also with music and so on. So he connected music, arts, and even the universe through mathematics because he said that based on this idea of music of the spheres. Spheres are seen the planets. So we can hear the sounds of the planets, that each planet has a different sound through different ratios from here down on Earth. And they are all connected in harmony through mathematics. Next, we have the Ephesian school, again 6th century BC. It was only Heraclitus. He didn't have any students. We'll say later on why. And his main idea was logos. I'm sure you have heard it before. For him, it was the divine that brings together order and knowledge. Order, as in the math in the ancient Egyptians, or Tao in Taoism, for example, that there is something divine that brings order and combines everything together, unites the opposites, everything together into one. When it comes to people, it gives them the knowledge, because logos in Greek means uh, come mix means different things. Means word, what we say, it's the logic, the reasoning, and also divine from Heraclitus. And that's why the Christian Bible later on, the Christians, because they took ideas from the ancient Greeks, at the beginning they had logos was a word, was a god, and the logos was a word, something like that. Then they changed it to remove this idea, and they put word was God and so on. Because through the words, you bring this divine down to earth. His element, he had an element too. Everything is fire, he said, because fire bends and transforms everything. So he had many sayings, and the two most famous ones is everything is in constant flux, change, because everything changes all the time. We cannot have something, everything, nothing remains the same. So everything changes. And that's where the second saying comes. You cannot step into the same river twice. Even yourself changes, that river changes, you cannot step into the same one. And that war, strife, and conflict is the father of all. Because through war, strife, conflict between people, there is change. New civilizations fall, new come up, things changing, new laws, and so on. There is change all the time. And that's why his element was fire. He was considered a dark philosopher. That's why he didn't have students, because his teachings were short and enigmatic sayings that he never gave explanations. Sometimes they were also contradictory. As we said, he was talking about change, fire, destroying, conflict, but he was talking about logos that brings everything together in unity. So it was weird to understand him. And at some point, someone asked Socrates, because he was the wisest, what do you think about Heraclitus' ideas? And he said, from the ones that I could understand, they are excellent, they are magnificent. The rest, I don't know, I have no idea. Imagine, even Socrates, that he was considered the wisest, he said that Heraclitus' ideas were really amazing, but only the ones he could understand. So maybe he had even greater ideas, but no one knows. Next, we have the Eleatic school from the 5th century BC. Here, the first one was Parmenides, a well-known ancient philosopher. He was a medicine man who lived in dark caves in the mountains while fasting to wake up the mind by shutting the body. Like many gurus of the East, he tried to shut down his body so he can let his mind work and find the truth. That's why he was the first rationalist, because he used reason to get to the truth. Aletheia in Greek. And he said that emotions and senses provide illusions. For example, the change, that change is just an illusion, like Heraclitus said before. So for him, it was the reason and nothing changes. That was his main idea. And then he said that he received the truth from a divine being and wrote a poem explaining these ideas. The main one was being is, and it doesn't change, that every being is. It cannot be, is not. And it cannot change, cannot adapt. That's it. And all things work together as one, unity. Again, monist. His student, Zeno of Elea, not the Stoic one, we'll talk in another video about the Zeno of Citium. This one was Zeno of Elea. He had the same ideas. He built on his teacher ideas on the unity without change. But he was also famous about his paradoxes. He had a lot of them. The most well-known one was the one with Achilles and the turtle. Some of you might have heard before. And basically his idea, it was the paradox. The story goes that Achilles, who was the greatest warrior back then, had a race with a turtle. And everyone knows that when someone races a turtle, whoever he is will will finish the race before the turtle because it's slower. But his idea was that if the turtle has a head start like this before Achilles starts, Achilles will not win because Achilles will have to travel all this head start while the turtle already moves further, and then Achilles has to come over here where the turtle already moves further, and so on. So it was a paradox. We all know that Achilles will win, but based on because of the head start the turtle had and the mathematics, he couldn't win apparently. One of the most famous paradoxes of his. Then we have the atomic school, the 5th century BC again. The first one was Leucippus. We don't know much about him, but probably he was the first to propose the idea of atoms. Back then, imagine in the 5th century BC that they didn't have any equipment, but he found out about that. And even the name comes from Greek. Basically, almost tomi means to cut something, to cut something. When you put a in front, it means that you cannot cut it. It's not divisible. It's indivisible. So atoms are the smallest indivisible things that make up everything. When you go to deeper layers of everything and everyone, we are made up of atoms. His student is the famous one from their school, Democritus in Greek. He said that universe is made up of atoms, like his teacher, and the space where those atoms exist. Then atoms are infinite, indestructible, and invisible particles. They are everywhere. You cannot destroy them. They are infinite. And atoms have fundamental primitive qualities such as mass, size, and shape. Basically, he built up on his teacher's ideas. Next, we have the pluralist school in the 5th century BC again. These ones responded to Eleatic school, who were the monists that believed in one principle, because they are the pluralists. They believe in many elements, plural. That the universe was created from combination of more than one fundamental element. The most well-known one was Empedocles. There are multiple, his ideas were that there are multiple basic material principles, or arches, earth, fire, air, and earth. So he used all the four main elements, he said. Another idea of his was the motives, the efficient principles, that love and strife because they make things move, adapt, and change. Because of love or conflicts, we change who we are, civilization change. There is always a movement because of these two things. So as you can see, he combined the Eleatic, the monist ideas of the elements, either that everything is united into one, the unity, and the Ephesian ideas of Heraclius that the world works because of the separation of the strife that we come to conflict and we separate. So he combined these two ideas of unity and separation. Anaxagoras from earlier that we said is monist, the one that used the cosmic nous. He is also considered pluralist because he said us about the infinite seeds that all of us and everything are infinite seeds. So that's an idea of pluralism. But he was in the school of the monists because of the cosmic mind. And Eusebius and Democritus, the atomists, because of the atoms, are also considered pluralist, obviously. These are the resources I used to find these ideas. From the channel of Adam Roosevelt, he is a philosophy professor. History of Ancient Philosophy is a playlist of his. And Diogenes Laertius in Greek. His book, Lives and Opinions of Eminent Philosophers, was a book that was talking about all these ancient Pre-Socratics and many more, up to Aristotle, Stoics, and so on. He was a biographer of that era, and he was writing about all these thinkers. So he's the main resource. You can also find more on Britannica and stuff for websites, of course. I will have these links down for everyone. And later on, I will create videos also about Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and Stoics, and maybe some more. I will link somewhere around these videos too, so you can watch them. I hope you like this one. Write down in the comments which one was your favorite of these philosophers and why. If you knew about them, if I missed someone important, of course, like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with someone that may like these videos. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.